Welcome back to the Real Estate Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Christensen.
And I'm Bridger Christensen.
I feel like with every guest, I always say, we got such a special guest today. And I mean that with everybody, but especially today, we do have a special guest that is also highly requested. We have none other than the Flipping Friday guy, the treasure hunter, and probably one of the most popular, I feel like, real estate guys in Utah with us, John Maxim. It's great to have you here, man.
Oh, thank you. That's highly exaggerated, but
no. So John, we always have everyone fill out a bio. I don't have it on me, but a few things that stuck out were, I mean, in particular, you've transacted over $500 million of real estate. How long have you been in real estate?
I got my license in 2000, but I didn't really I was mostly pretending back then, donating plasma and saying I was a realtor.
Yeah,
and I think I flipped my first house in 2004.
Okay. That's awesome. Do you know like a running total amount of flips that you've done?
No, it's funny actually. I kind of realized that once you pass 300, if you tell people how many houses you flipped, you kind of come off as a douchebag. So I just kind of stopped counting and saying how many. That's where, and people always make on Flipping Friday, I always say my name's John Maxim and I flip a lot of houses and I just don't go into it. But then in 29 or maybe let's see, it's 2021. Architectural Digest wanted to do an article on me because I had flipped so many historic homes. Like a big chunk of the homes I flipped are over 100 years old. And so they actually for this article, they made me prove how many homes I had flipped. And so in 2021, when they did that article, I found out that I was just a little bit over 1,000 and that 400 of those were over 100 years old.
Wow.
But then they never ran the article.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so fun.
I can post the email if someone wants me to prove it. I know that's big with flippers and stuff, but yeah. So I haven't counted since then, but the last couple of years have been not great. So I've probably been doing like 40 a year. So I'm probably getting close to 1,200.
That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah, I feel like that's for those who are listening, that's a lot of homes. I feel like you're probably one of maybe, I don't know, 5 or 10 people in Utah who've done that many. I mean, I can think of one other person.
In full transparency, some of those are like developments or condo complexes or things, and we're counting units, not deals, kind of stuff. But yeah, it is a lot. I did really high volume, especially 2009 to like 2017. Like 100 plus homes a year.
That's great. Flips, not wholesales, or was that include?
Flips. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I've probably done less wholesales than you guys. Just always, I'm like, man, I should just keep this and make a little bit more.
Yeah. No, hey, I mean, everyone has their bread and butter. I mean, wholesaling is nice. I think it's always nice. It's a good entry level gig. That's like why we started doing it. And then it was like, oh, we could double our profit if we flip this. So let's flip. So I totally understand the thought process of like, I'm going to buy it. But let's jump back to, you got your license in 2000 or 2004?
2000.
You got your license in 2000. So let's go back to John's life in 2000. What led you to get your license? And then why, I guess, have you continued in real estate? Have you ever had any other opportunities with any different industries? What's kind of kept bringing you back? And
and how old were you in 2000?
2000, I was 21.
Okay.
So I didn't particularly want to work. As a bachelor, I bought my first house with 3 of my friends, and it had a converted garage, and we just moved bunk beds in there, and we lived there, and then we rented the rest of the house out to other guys. This was like house hacking before someone branded it house hacking. And so we lived there for free, and I just managed that place. And we were making like $1,000 a month on that house from and 10 guys lived there. So it was just like a constant 10 college age guys. It was a constant party. It was kind of like a frat house in Rose Park,
Nice.
And So legitimately, I always tell people like I donated plasma for a living because that was the max of my drive at that time in my life.
Yeah.
And I just the lady who sold the house to me just kind of offered to let me be her assistant, and I went and worked for her. And she had a pretty good book of business, so I made really good money, enough that I was like, man, I think I made more money than my dad this year, and I'm going to quit college and I'm going to be in real estate. And so but then I also thought I was hot stuff, and I just quit. And I think I made like $80,000 as her assistant the first year, and then I made like $8,000 or 10 or something the next on my own. Like I didn't realize how hard it was. So anyway, I just kind of pretended to be an agent. I didn't really try very hard to learn anything or anything like that. And then a house flipper moved in next door to me, a big one, Mike Baird. He's the only guy I know that actually just retired, just made enough money and retired, which is pretty awesome. But he was big. He had like a television show on Spike TV, and he moved into my fourplex. He bought the duplex right next door. So we became friends, and I started doing deals for him, like 3 or 4 deals as his agent. And then he came to me one day and he's like, man, you don't really bring anything to the table. I went and got my license. And so I watched him flip houses and thought that's so cool, but I still didn't really apply myself at the time. Anyway, then one day, I was broke. My now ex-wife was super mad at me for something. I don't know. I was walking down to Maverick to get a Mountain Dew, let off some steam. And this guy was in a wheelchair trying to put a for sale by owner sign up in front of his house. It was like 3 houses down the street from mine. And so I offered to help him put his sign in. Anyway, I was talking to him, and he had this big, beautiful house down in the Marmalade. And he told me what he wanted to sell it for. And I like almost fell over because it was so, I knew, because I was in real estate enough to know that's super cheap. And I thought, man, I think I can flip this house. So I just made him an offer and he accepted. Well, I didn't know anything. I wasn't going to RIAs. I wasn't there. Bigger Pockets wasn't really a thing. Like none of this stuff was happening. I just was like, what do I do? So I tried to get a hold of my buddy Mike, and he's like, well, I'll buy it from you. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to buy it from me. I want to do it myself. He's like, well, I don't really know, again, what you're going to bring to the table here. So anyway, he's like, well, you got to find someone to lend you money. And I just started calling everybody in my phone. One of the things that I've always benefited from is I have no shame. And so literally my cell phone, 200 contacts, I called everybody. That's and awesome. Even if they didn't have money, and I'm like, this is the deal. I'm going to flip a house. I need 140 grand. And they all said no.
140.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, this is in the Marmalade. This house right now is probably a $900,000.
I was going to say,
yeah. So I need 140 grand. And, everyone said no. And then I called, there was 3 or 4 though, that actually asked good questions. I called back and I begged. And one of them was like, okay, John, I'll believe you. And he gave me a hard money loan at 24%, which I had no idea at the time. Like literally, I'm just making this stuff up as I go.
Wow.
And we ended up flipping the house. I flipped the house. I couldn't figure out where to get rehab money from. So then I called my buddy again. He's like, all right, well, you got the deal. You got the hard money. I'll partner with you and we can flip this together. Anyway, it was my first home. It was in a historic district. Like we blew it with the windows and all the things that now I know how to do in a historic district. And I made, after 9 months of flipping our first house, which was converted into a 5-plex, it's a big 2-story. So it was a nightmare. I made like $6,000, but I was totally hooked. Like I loved it. I just loved the fun of solving the problems and doing the stuff. So anyway, after that, I mean, the rest is kind of history.
That's awesome. No, that's so a great story. I feel like that's a good good perspective on it, because I feel like a lot of people are too scared to do it. And you were just like, no, I'm just going to do it. I feel like anybody who knows John, when you're like, I have no shame, I'm like, that plays so much in your favor in a lot of things, because no shame, reaching out for hard money lenders, the posts you do, I feel like you're pretty known for your social media. And we know you've gotten deals and made a lot of money from your social media. So I think that's awesome. That's something that I need to work on, is just being more willing to just reach out and like put myself out there for people. I feel like that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, is to kind of get ourselves out of our own bubble. So
Totally.
that's awesome.
No, and I love like the no shame calling 200 people for a loan. I like, who would do that? Right?
Yeah,
like
you're calling your uncles and your
yeah.
old bishops and friends and people, anyone. Like one of the guys that lived in our house that just had a job, I called him thinking maybe he would have
totally.
He was like, dude, I don't have 140 grand sitting around. But yeah, you just never know. And what I also learned from that is that there's way more money out there than you realize, just in your own sphere of influence. Like there was probably, I don't know, 25% of the people that could have lent me that money. I never even imagined that many people in my, or unless they were lying, but whatever,
Yeah.
I never imagined that. And then as my career has gone on, I found out there's tons of money out there.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So from 2000, take us from 2004 to the recession. What did that look like?
Yeah. So 2004, I didn't become a big house. I think from 2004 to 2006, I maybe flipped like 6 houses or something. And, one of them was really good, but all the rest of them were not that great. I didn't make a ton of money. It wasn't, very profitable. I was still like working a 9 to 5. I was still kind of just pretending to be a real estate agent, and do sales. I got a job as a mortgage broker right before, when anyone, if you fogged a mirror, you could get a loan.
Yeah.
So I was an agent and a broker at the time. And I partnered up with a guy and we started doing new construction in Park City. And our business model was find goofy lots, because developers, especially in a place like Park City where it's very mountainous or hilly, they do their plans and they have all these flat lots, but there's always like a goofy corner triangle lot or it's super skinny lot. And they got the lot approved, but nobody wanted to buy it. And then the developer pulls out and there's just a vacant lot. And we found we could get these for super cheap prices. And then we hired a designer to build cool houses that played onto got built into a hill or down a very steep hill or one of those, some kind of thing, or very odd shape. And we were able to get, again, financing was ridiculous in 2007. We were able to get like 30 bank loans to build houses. So I got into doing that before I really even kind of mastered flipping, It's just kind of a real estate investor, just playing or doing whatever I could to make money. I was doing loans, I was doing retail sales, and I was building these spec homes. And then the market crashed. And we made a decent amount of money. We did some really stupid stuff. Like we bought a killer like man cave office that we were financing with a big screen projection TV. That's how old I am. It was awesome. And a pool table and stuff. But the market crashed and I got hit really hard. I mean, we had a couple flips going. The hard money lenders we were able to work stuff out with, but the banks, they just froze everything. And so here I am, 2009 we were able to short sell a bunch of the specs, but they just froze construction in the middle. No one would lend on them. They wouldn't fund them anymore. Everything just stopped in its tracks. And so I ended up with like 19 foreclosures on my credit. We were able to short sell the other 12 or 13 of them. Like we were just in poverty mode,
Yeah.
Everything crashed down. It was a crazy, crazy time. There's some wild stories. I don't know if statute of limitations, I could maybe tell some of them, but I don't know.
I was going to say,
it's been,
how many years has it been?
But I didn't go to jail or do anything wrong, but everyone was getting investigated. It was a crazy time in the world. And I thought about going to work for the man, but I was just like, man, real estate investing, this is awesome. I got to figure this out. Then I get divorced. And it hit me pretty hard. And I went back to, I'll just donate plasma and be a loser for the rest of my life. I don't care.
Yeah.
I got really behind on my mortgage, but in my real estate investing, I had kind of mastered loan modifications. That's actually how I survived, is I started doing loan modifications for people. I ended up helping like 200 people save their house, get loan modifications. I like re-engineered the government's calculator so that I could plug everything in my Excel spreadsheet and tell people what they could get approved for and stuff. And I wasn't making very much money doing that, and I wasn't doing great. And so for a couple of years, I just floundered and my mortgage got really, really, really behind. And so my true origin story into how I became a house flipper is I had postponed the foreclosure on my bachelor pad for a long time, but they finally called me and they were like, there's no postponements. None of the tricks I knew to save it would work. I could have filed bankruptcy, but I didn't want to, I didn't want to do that with the other things going on in my life too. So I just kind of like, well, I'm going to lose the house finally. Like I owe 20 grand on this house and there's zero way for me to get it. I still hadn't mastered like borrowing or anything like that. I'm sitting on the front porch and we just watched the movie Hot Rod where he jumps a bus to like raise money for cancer. And I just laid the news out on all my roommates who rented from me. Like, guys, Monday, the house is going to foreclosure. You guys are going to have to move out. And they're all like, we've been paying you rent. You haven't been paying your mortgage. I'm like, no, I've been living off that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But then we kind of were, we were all friends and like, man, why don't people do that stuff like on Hot Rod? So I thought, man, I got this car. I bet if I light it on fire and I just go to the internet and say, hey, loan me $20 and then I'll light this car on fire, that people will do it. And so I created what I called loanations. And by the way, I should sue them. I feel like GoFundMe stole this idea from me because they came out after this, I think. I should probably fact check that before I sue anybody. But the loanations were small donations that I would pay back, eventually. Small, but but crowdsourcing online. So anyway, I wrote a big blog post about, my life's pathetic and I screwed up, but I'll light my car on fire and maybe you guys will have mercy on me. And in 3 days, because again, this was a Friday and the auction was on Monday. So Monday morning at 9 a.m., I run up to the auction house with a check for $20,000 that I had raised on let's see, we had Facebook and Twitter and my blog post. Anyway, it was crazy. Like it went viral. It got on Again, no shame. Yeah. Like I caught a lot of heat for it too. Like people are like, you're pathetic, of course. But anyway, we raised the money. I actually still own that house. And right now it's my real estate office, but we were able to save the house. And then I had to go light the car on fire and I got arrested and had to pay a bunch of money. Anyway.
Save the house though.
You actually, I've learned there's a way to do that. You have to do it on private property. So find somebody with private property where it's safe to light your car on fire and it's totally legal. But I went out to BLM land and yeah.
I was going to say, if you go on,
it didn't go well.
If you go online, you guys can find the video. I found it. Yeah.
Yeah.
KSL did the article and everything. And that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So I got federal probation for a year, but it worked out really well because I ended up, me and my probation officer became friends and I ended up selling him his house as his retail agent too. So
wow,
there you go. You make a deal out of anything almost.
That's awesome. That's great.
But, the origin story part. The whole point of the thing is, I'm running to the attorney at the auction house with a check to save my own home. And when I run up there, I see this group of people and I see Mike Baird, my buddy Mike Baird. I see Matt Strong. I didn't really know it was him at the time. Brad Lancaster. These guys are all standing there bidding on houses. And I'm like, they're in flip-flops and t-shirts and they're just so relaxed. And so I hang out while everything's going on because my house wasn't the first one. And I see these guys just bidding on houses. And I'm like, these are my people. This is what I want to do for a living. And there was probably a few other people that will end up being on your podcast someday that I know were buying at the auction back then that are still around. But yeah, I just decided then that I was going to learn everything I could about auctions. And that's what really got me going. And in the beginning, this was 2009. It was really hard to get money back then, but I figured out a way to do it. And once I figured that out, we were just buying houses at the auction like crazy. It was like Christmas morning every day with houses. That's awesome. During the recession, really like that. And I always tell people this, as everyone's predicting like what's going to happen in the market or value's going to go down. I made way more money when the market was, when it was depreciating year over year than I ever did when it was going up, because you can buy so much better in that market.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking forward to the crash that we've been talking about is going to happen for the last like 6 years. I don't know if it's going to come anytime soon though. I think we're going to be with with stuff. I mean, I don't know what my predictions are, but with inventory and things like that, I think we're going to be flat or up for the next little while still. But if there's ever a down market, jump into that. It's great for flipping.
That's what they say, you know, when there's blood in the waters type of thing, that's when you should be jumping in.
Yeah.
During those times when you were flipping, what kind of, because I feel like right now, most flippers that we know and ourselves, we shoot to make, you know, 10% or so of what the ARV is. So if we're selling a home for 500 grand, we want to make at least 50 on it. Back then, because we had talked to Matt about this, what kind of profits were you looking at per house? Because prices were way different back then. Was it more of a volume over, you know, the more volume we can do, you know, we're okay making a little bit less, or what did that look like? And how was it selling homes back then? Because everybody's getting foreclosed on. There obviously were people looking to buy still, retail buyers.
You know, it's funny. A lot of investors, you know, in my network now got into it, you know, in 2016, 2018, 2019, when the market was just a hill going up.
Every deal was like
and you know, if you don't get an offer in the first weekend, you start to get weird. And then 2022, you know, March happens and we hit that ceiling and it just bounced down. Yeah. And then I remember, you know, in 2009, 10, 11, 12, we had a rule, like you never drop the price on your house for 30 days, like period, because like it took that long all the time. And we were always in the 30 to 60 day range. And so back then, I mean, it took 30 to 60 days to sell. It actually felt a lot like it does right now. It was really important to be the best house in the neighborhood though back then. Whereas, you know, in 2016 to 2020, that wasn't that important because the inventory was so low. And right now it's kind of getting that again, where you really need to like dial in your designs and your finished product, because buyers have options and they're holding off, you know, and waiting. We don't have that crazy seller's market. We don't have a seller's market really at all right now.
Yeah,
so absolutely. So we have to be the best product.
For sure. So you mentioned earlier, I think maybe between those years, I don't know, 2008 or 9 to 2012, or I don't know exactly when that went to, but you really ramped up your operations. You said you had some sort of way that you were able to raise money, to just, right, be like Christmas morning at the auction, you're able to buy all these houses. So you were flipping about 100 houses a year at that point.
Yeah.
Right. Was that all in Utah?
I branched out all over the place. I tried all kinds of stuff. I mean, there were crazy deals during the recession. Me and my partner bought a house for $7,000 in Alabama. Mm-hmm. And we were like, what's going on here? This is a 3-bed, 1-bath house. I mean, it's kind of trashed, but $7,000. So it almost on a whim, we bought it it was Hubzu or Xhome or something, one of those auction websites. Yeah. Like we didn't fly out there. We didn't know anything. We were like, I mean, we lose $7,000. What's the big deal? We didn't know anything about Montgomery, Alabama at the time. Huh? It just like, we couldn't believe it. And it's comping out in like the $50,000 range. So we buy it, we fly out there, we fix it up. We ended up like, wow, there's tons of houses in this place. And it's one of those markets, rental market that like, they don't ever really appreciate, but you get steady rents. Everyone just rents, you know, it's got 2 car manufacturers and 2 colleges all there in Montgomery kind of thing. And so we ended up buying a whole bunch of houses out there just as cash flowing rentals. And they're still worth, I think, $65,000, $70,000. They've barely moved in value. So you don't get the equity play, but it was a good place when we were making money to like throw cash. Oh, let's just go buy a $15,000 house that we can make $500 a month on, and you know, build those up. But yeah, I mean, we found all kinds of cool auction websites where we'd buy houses in like Dallas and this. We kept trying stuff out of state, and I just eventually. The headache to profit ratio wasn't good enough for me out of state.
Yeah, we always maybe
You're
this
the
isn't
one who's coined that.
Yeah.
I forget who.
Was that what it was? We call it the brain damage to profit ratio. Maybe that's not the best term. Headache might be better. So you're flipping a bunch of houses, 2008, 2009, 100 plus a year. Were you doing any sort of, risk to reward analysis on that? Like, did you have the thought that you could lose money? Did that even cross your mind? Was everything just turning so quick? There really was no risk? Because obviously today, from what we all have seen, there is risk associated with flipping. So how was it back then doing that volume?
No, I mean, yeah, it was still really kind of learning in the beginning, and I mean, like we said in the beginning, took action and just went I just chased every deal. There was never a thought like, oh, I have too many deals. That didn't happen to me until I had 47 deals at one time and I was a one-man show. But before then, it was just like, this is a deal. I know it's a deal. It's a deal. And one of the benefits of house flipping is, for the most part, every deal is its own thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got $18 million borrowed on all these houses, and I could look at it as a whole, like, oh, what, I'm going to be fine, whatever. But I never looked at it that way. I was always like, this house has 12%, this house has 12%, this house has 10%, this house has 25%, and just deal by deal. And I've mentioned to you guys before, and I'm not a great business owner or manager, or I don't think I am. I don't do a lot of that calculating and stuff. I just take one deal at a time. And I'm like, okay, this deal's great.
Yeah.
Which hurt me. I don't know if you want to jump ahead, but hurt me pretty bad in 2022 because I was not thinking as a whole, and everything dropped as a whole at that time.
For sure. And I was going to say, maybe we kind of fast forward through some of those years. So it looks like you got into a pretty good groove. You're buying a lot of properties off the MLS from auctions that eventually probably transitioned to wholesalers are now sending out all these deals, or wholesaling, I feel like really comes into play, or becomes really popular. So how did, what did it look like? I couldn't even imagine being a one-man show with 40 some odd flips going. You start to grow your team. It looks like you have more of a team now. I know we sold you a flip earlier this year. You never came and looked at it. You had a project manager come and look at it. So what does your team look like now versus back then? How do you kind of manage all of that? How has it been to delegate important tasks to other people as well?
Great questions. Honestly, I'm so bad at this stuff. It has taken me years to get a good team. And I feel like this year, and I had the kind of, I guess, the recession we just went through of 2022, which a lot of people like to pretend wasn't a recession, but it was pretty gnarly. That didn't help because I lost team members and I'm still trying to figure things out. But yeah, I mean, doing it on my own had some benefits, but the big problem with it was time. And, I have 5 kids, and when I was, one day I woke up and I had just bought my 47th house in my inventory that was a current flip. And I like woke up in the middle of the night, and I handle stress pretty good. That is part of the job, but I was like, holy crap, what am I doing? 47. Like I got so caught up in getting the deals that I almost wasn't paying attention. And luckily the market was perfect for somebody to be that dumb. Because it was just, things were selling, prices were appreciating 10%, 15%, 20%, in 20, wow. I think that was 2018. And so 2018 is really when I started to okay, I can't just keep doing this myself because I want more time for my family. But the problem is creating systems is a skill, and it's not one that I have, and being a manager. So I would hire somebody and just kind of throw them in the deep end, like, here, go flip this house. And then it would take 9 months and we wouldn't make any money. I'm like, man, you're terrible. But I didn't train, I'm not very good at training. Anyway, so there's been a lot of trial and error for me to get a good team. Getting a really good assistant has been huge. Once I got that tackled, that took a ton of the busy work off my plate that I'm also not very good at. And that allowed me to focus more on my project managers. And then once I kind of got a system with that, but there's a lot of guys that I respect that are able to build these systems so quickly, and I'm so impressed with them. And if you can do that, it's definitely going to be to your benefit, But it's crazy. Even now with my team, we get, I've kind of learned that one project manager can handle 5 houses in our system.
Okay.
We're not losing time. Once it goes over 5, we start to see delays. So now I have 2 project managers and we have 17 houses. So I'm starting to manage some of them myself, and I'm just so much better at it than them. I don't want to brag or like, and I'm not saying that because it's just, I've done it so many times and I've just got it down, and I can handle those pretty efficiently. And so it's a hard thing to teach. The ability to do all of those things is a hard thing to teach. Anyway, so it's been a lot of trial and error. I feel like right now is the first time where I've had a pretty solid team where everything's kind of working together right now.
That's great.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, going off of that, I feel like I've even noticed that, because we met you when we first started back in probably met you in 2019 or so.
Yeah.
And versus just recently when we've been sending out deals, like your AM's been reaching out and following up and asking us, hey, do you guys got anything else coming up? And that's awesome to see, because I feel like that's where I feel like all 3 of us are visionaries, not the best at systems and integrations and things like that. And that's where we struggle, frankly, is being able to create and implement and run systems and processes. And so it's cool to see that, because it just means that you're more hands off from your business in a lot of areas. And, I reach out, hey, you want to be on the podcast? And you're like, here's my assistant's number. I'm like, that's cool. That's awesome. Trying to get like that,
you get busy, and it's just such a benefit for me to show up at work and be like, what am I doing today? What am I doing tomorrow? And she just tells me. And it's great. It's great for a guy like me. I can barely even know how to use my calendar. So it's a really nice thing to have.
No, absolutely. Well, let's talk about, Ethan kind of brought that up from, coming up into 2022. What did that look like for you? We've kind of chatted about this, but there's all this, the beauty of real estate that everybody talks about, making tons and tons of money.
This is a podcast about failure. You want a big failure story?
Yep.
Yeah. So
let's hear how that went for you. And
anyone who's doing real estate in 2021 is, like, I was making money hand over foot. The houses were appreciating faster than the hard money was costing.
Yeah.
So it didn't even matter how long I held on to it. I'm paying 12% interest and it's going up by 20%. I can not touch it. And I did. There were houses I held on to for a year.
Oh, I know. We wholesaled one for
it. Almost. I wholesaled it and I made like $50,000 or something. It was a crazy time in real estate. It really was, especially that year, 2021. And I knew that was bad.
Yeah.
Honestly. And we talked about my biggest flip, me and a partner. So I guess technically I made $750,000, but we made $1.5 million on a commercial deal. And I was like, I know the market's heading for a dip here pretty soon. I'm going to have a cushion. So I actually started setting aside, I set out to make my goal is to make 12% of ARV.
Yeah.
On flips. I've gone down a little bit just because buying's been really hard. This current market where it's very flat it's harder to hit that. We'll do some deals if they're bigger for 8% or 10% of ARV, but my goal's always been kind of 12. And I was buying them like, okay, I'll make 12%, but then I would end up making 25% or 40% sometimes.
Yeah.
It was a crazy, crazy time.
Yep.
So what I would do is all right, I'm going to take the 12% and I'm going to use that, and the rest of it I'm going to put away. And I had stocked away over $1 million just sitting in the bank in mid 2022, ready for something bad to happen. And then it did, but But my experience with the first recession, and I have spoken on this. This is why you got to be careful with predictions. Like things change, the world changes, everything changes. I would go to lunches with people. I'd do RIA meetings. I'd do whatever. And they're like, oh, tell us about the recession. What do we need to know? And I'm like, listen, the one thing I learned about the recession is real estate moves really slow. Like, yeah, we went down 30% in the 2000s, in the 2007 recession, but it took like 3 or 4, or 5, in some places 5 years to hit that bottom of 30%. It's not like 2007, the banks go bankrupt. It turned. It was a very slow turn. Okay. And so I assumed incorrectly that that's what was going to happen when we hit again. But 2021 was going up so fast. I mean, if you look at a graph, and a lot of people, real estate agents and stuff, they're always like a quarter behind, right? They always say it was mid or late 2022. No, I'm telling you, it was March 2022. Yeah. And it was like you look at the graph and it hits a ceiling and boom, almost within a month, we dropped like 30%. And I was not prepared for that at all. It was massive. It was insane. Like literally my profits just disappeared. I was losing on every single house because I'm trying to make 12% and they just dropped 30, like overnight. It was so bad. And here I am, 2023. I've just there's a big problem. You've got all these deals and all this money in play. And then
how many houses did you have at the time?
And here's the thing. I remember talking to some other guys and they're like, yeah, I'm nervous. And I was like, I'm nervous too, but we're making so much money. I'm just going to be prepared with this a whole bunch of money set aside for when it hits, I'll be okay. But it wasn't enough. I didn't save enough. I had too many. And that's the thing. I was buying everything. I was like, yeah, the market's going to turn at some point. I was predicting later. I was kind of predicting near September. Like another assumption, in Utah's market, we almost, like in any market, you can see, if you look at the values, it's low in January, February. It starts popping up in March, April, May, June, July, August, it's going up. September, you start to see it go down. It goes down. There's a little bump in November right before Thanksgiving. It bumps up before Christmas, and then it's down. And it's the exact same in a down market, in a flat market, in an up market. It's always like that. So I was like, it's not going to go down before September because that's when it always goes down. If it's going to dip in this year, it will dip in the fall. Yeah. And that was a huge mistake. So I was literally in March, I think I bought like 6 houses in that month. And my earnest money was gone and I couldn't stop it. I probably should have. I probably would have made $50,000 if I would have just canceled and lost the earnest money then taken the losses of what I paid for those deals in that month. But, optimism is a huge problem we have. And I really was like, no, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Anyway, it was like an 18-month steady of just one loss after another. And to your real estate business, that creates major problems because all of a sudden, all your money, which is dedicated to houses, the only way you're paying the bills and keeping things moving is by pulling money off of a house that you shouldn't. And then you get into trouble and then it starts snowballing. And then next thing you know, like it gets out of control. And that's what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of guys who have been in this business for a very long time getting into serious trouble because they weren't open and honest with their investors about what kind of things were going on. And it's an easy pitfall to get into when you start losing money is like, well, I'm good at this. I made $2 or $3 million last year. I've made $2 million for the last 5 years, every year. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be able to take care of this. But the market gets so bad that and in all honesty, I've been eking by. I mean, I have a team, so I have pretty high overhead. We're still able to pay the bills. I haven't lost my house in foreclosure. I'm not there yet. And we've started to see turns where I'm in the green again, where we're actually making money. But really that's just started to happen this summer. Everything before that was just disaster after disaster after disaster. And I'd keep thinking, all right, this house is going to be the one. And because things are snowballing or we're running out of money, it would take longer than we thought, like just problem after problem after problem. So, I guess my big failing was thinking that the market was going to crash the same way it did before. But what changed between 2007 and 2022 is social media and the way news traveled. You know, when things crashed in 2007, we were all watching television screens, you know, like in a movie where you're standing in the road and you're at the TV. I don't know if they really have TV stores, but the window with all the TVs, and there's a big group of people like, oh, wow, the news. That doesn't happen anymore. Right now, like somebody posts something in Brazil and everyone in the world sees it. Like it just like news travels so quickly. And so when the market crashed, it crashed quickly instead of slowly. And so I think, and that's the thing, because of the way that news and word travels, it's a whole new game that I was not prepared for. I made those assumptions that it would turn slow and that it would turn in the fall, and it killed me. I mean, even just those 6 houses probably accounted to $250,000 in losses that I all bought in the month of March that I couldn't stop because my earnest money was hard. You know, it was terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah, kind of on that same note, going through, the past, I guess 18 months, 2 years, whatever it was, we lost roughly 300 grand, and I know it's all relative, but there's people's shoes I don't envy being in, and I often envy being in John Maxim's shoes. I'd love to experience some of that, but that's one where, I don't even want to know, what that's turned out to be, but good for you for just staying resilient. And again, not giving up. There was no giving up, no shying away from it, and just diving in and getting everyone, taken care of. So,
and not taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people did, so.
Yeah. You got a lot of lenders, and they trust you. You got to take care of them even when things are bad. So.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, that's awesome. Well, a couple questions to wrap up the real estate side of this. Something we like to ask everybody is, what was your best deal? You can interpret that how you'd like. And then what was your worst deal? Same thing there.
My worst deal was when I decided, which happens a lot to flippers, like, oh, I'm going to go build some townhomes. And I didn't do my homework properly, and it ate up a ton of my time. And then I didn't realize I thought they were townhomes, but technically they were condos because of one little entryway on a small portion of it. So even though all the units except for 2 of them were separate units, these 2 kind of overlapped, and so that made them condos. And then you needed a whole different type of financing, so I couldn't sell them for 18 months because I had to go through all this paperwork crap to sell condos. Anyway, so no one could get a regular loan. No retail buyers could get a regular loan on it for 18 months. And it killed me because the loan was $3 million or something, hard money. And that extra 18 months ended up costing me like 300 grand on one deal. It's my biggest single loss on one deal. And it was miserable. There was nothing fun about that deal at all, especially I thought it was going to be fun. And then it just it was a nightmare. So that was my worst deal. My best deal, I don't know. I mentioned I made a huge profit on one, but one of the funnest things that's ever happened to me in real estate, well, it wasn't me. I saw this guy do this once who looked exactly like, bald and white. Of course it wasn't, Of course it wasn't me. Very handsome. Of course it wasn't me because this would be technically illegal. But what this guy did is he found out about a skyscraper downtown Ogden that was going to auction for a couple $1 million. And he didn't have the money. He didn't have it. He didn't know where it was going to come from. No hard money lender is going to lend it to him because it's historic, and it needed like 19 million. It had a bid of like $19 million just to earthquake reinforce it.
Oh my gosh.
And if you've been downtown Ogden, it's kind of the only skyscraper there. Used to be the Wells Fargo building. So anyway, but he just knew it was a deal, So he goes down to downtown Ogden to the auction. And he's there, and there's like 4 other people there. And these 2 guys show up, and I'm not kidding. They look just like they were out of the movie Wall Street. Like they just stepped out of the 80s with their suits and the whole deal. And they were from a local bank, and they started bidding. And so this attractive bald man and these guys were bidding against each other, getting kind of up. And, there were 2 of them and two of the bald guys, There's 2 of the bankers and 2 of the partners on the the bald guy's team. And they kind of pull him aside and say, and this is technically at auctions, you're not supposed to collude in the state of Utah. But for some reason, they had a little conversation, and we're talking about where they were willing to bid. And, the bald guy's friends kind of like pushed it because they were the only two bidders, and just said, they were like, well, what would it take for you to walk away from this deal right now? He's like, I probably like $200,000. We're going to go pretty up there. And they literally wrote him a check from their bank for $200,000 on the spot. And they stopped bidding, and the bank won it. Now the bank's got their name on top of the skyscraper. So I feel like those guys flipped the skyscraper.
Dude, that
like,
is
I don't know what, I don't know what the return on investment is for nothing to 200,000 in like, it costs like 20 minutes of life, but
wow,
that's my most favorite story. That definitely wasn't me, because never break the law online here.
Especially banks never breaking the law, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why would they?
Why would they break a law?
Yeah, no way,
Yeah.
no way.
It's probably not even true.
It's we've never gotten a
Yeah,
loan
very
from
fair.
that bank either.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we never have.
Come to think of it, that story was probably just made up for entertainment. But yeah, whatever.
Dude, that's awesome.
So those are yeah. That's to answer that question.
Wow.
Doesn't get
That's
much
crazy.
better than that, hypothetically speaking.
Yes,
of
of
course.
course. That would be a great experience.
Man,
That's very cool.
fantastic. Well, that's I don't think there's been a better story told,
No.
or a more profitable story in such short period
Yes,
of
in such a
time.
short period of time. I mean, I'm sure there's people that have wholesale deals and made $200,000 here and there, but
Yep.
Sure.
yeah.
Well, that's crazy, dude.
That's awesome.
Good for those guys.
Yeah.
Good for those.
Pays to be
guys.
bald, I guess,
Yeah.
and handsome.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears to kind of wrap this thing up. You do something that's very unique here in Utah, that nobody else is doing, which is the treasure hunt. So for those of you who don't know, you and a buddy go and hide. What was the first amount that you guys did?
Very
Was
first
it
year,
10 grand?
$5,000.
$5,000.
It was during
Okay.
COVID, and Dave, he was a wholesaler. That's how we met. He was just a wholesaler. I never met him in real life. We had only ever talked on the phone. I bought a deal or two from him. And he has this idea, COVID's miserable. Like, how can we get people out? He's like, his wife's like, I'm not going to let you bury 5,000 of our dollars in the mountains, but you can split it. So he's like, who's dumb enough to bury money and maybe never see it again? So he calls me, and instantly I thought it was a great idea. Yeah,
he said, sign me up.
It's funnier when he tells a story, because he's like, so I'm going through my phone, like, who would do that? Oh, John Maxim would do that. But yeah, we did it, and it was, like, really, it was just kind of fun. Like, yeah, I grew up on Indiana Jones, Goonies. I'm like, this is awesome. I would love to be doing a treasure hunt as an adult. That's like been my dream forever. So we did it, and it was a massive hit. And what we realized after doing it is it had this huge impact on the community. Like, people are losing weight. They're all going on hikes that they've never been on. They're getting out. They're building confidence. They're spending time with family. I mean, and as we've done more and more hunts, the stories just get better and better and better. Like, it's incredible. So anyway, it's almost like something that a hobby that we feel like we can't even stop doing now, because it's just built this really huge community that just loves it and benefits from it in so many ways. And so the last treasure we hid was $25,000. We've kind of left it at that amount, because I feel like once we go higher, then because it brings out the crazies, money does. And I think if we go above 25,000, I might have to worry about my kids getting kidnapped, maybe, or something. Like, we had a guy with a machete show up to one of the treasure hunts, yelling at us because we didn't give the money to a homeless person instead. Like, you just get crazier people.
I didn't even
coming
think
out,
about that.
Because we used to dream about, wow, we should do $100,000 treasure hunt or
Yeah.
$1 million treasure hunt. That will be the day. But we're like, yeah, I think that would be, I don't know. I need like Secret Service or something to do that.
Though.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. I think that's something that we've thought is really cool and unique. And I feel like it probably, not the reason why you guys did it, but inadvertently it just helps your brand, and your buddy. But I'm sure that there are people out there who are either wholesalers or realtors or anyone within the real estate industry that sees what you're doing and they're like, I want to do a deal with him, So that's
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
It's definitely built up the Instagram following, and there's been lots of benefits to that with new lenders and new deals and things like that. Definitely not as big as I would think. I mean, we always say we use our profits from flipping to do the treasure, and we've tried getting sponsors and different things like that, but it's definitely burning a hole in our pockets. We're trying to figure out a way. We either need to make more money or figure out a way to monetize it somehow, but we're very strict on it's always got to be free. Like no one's ever going to pay to play or pay for clues, and it's got to be open for everybody, like a real treasure hunt would be.
Yeah,
totally. No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, good for you guys for doing that. I know, I have some brother-in-laws who have done that, and it is cool to see all the stories of all the texts you get, the messages you get, and there's a lot of things out there that are just bigger than one person, bigger than ourselves, and that seems to be a really cool thing that I've seen on the news and many other places. So good for you for putting together a cool thing to bring the community together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
The last thing to kind of bring up is there also might be another guy that might be really identical to you as well, that might be getting a TV show on a certain network out there, and I may have heard a few things. Do you have? If you happen to hear of anything from anybody about that?
It's probably the same.
Well.
It's probably the same.
It might be the same guy.
I don't know.
That went
I don't
to
know if it's the same guy, but he is very attractive too. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, and maybe the treasure hunts kind of helped with that too. But yeah, the rumors are sort of true. I mean, we don't quite know where everything's going yet, but it's you could be seeing attractive bald house flippers on television sooner than you think.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to it.
Awesome.
That is great. I feel like we've said on the last note for the past 3 different topics we brought up, but on the last note here, do you have, maybe there's going to be 2 last notes actually. Do you have any actionable specific pieces of advice that you would leave with someone who is wanting to enter the crazy world of entrepreneurship, specifically house flipping? What, pieces of advice do you wish you would have had when you were taking on these big projects or growing a team? I know that's decades of experience condensed into one quick, question on a podcast, but if there were any, what are maybe 1 or 2 pieces of info that someone could turn around and apply?
It is tough to put in a small thing. I feel like I'm different than a lot of my peers, my house flipping peers. I've never really done much coaching, or I'm not a big fan of the masterminds and stuff like that myself. And so I learned a lot of things the hard way. And then now I teach courses, but what I see, the biggest hurdle I see almost always is what we talked about in the beginning, is just taking action. Yeah. And that's my whole story. Every experience, all the things the only thing I've done right almost is just continue to take action.
Yeah.
Whether it's lighting my car on fire to raise money, or just buying my first flip without any knowledge or experience or plan or anything. The only reason that worked is because I took action. And so I know people get super hung up on analysis paralysis, and they're really hung up on the risks and all of those things. But if I could first of all, buy the course, to go to the mastermind, go find a flip, meet hard money lenders, go to a RIA meeting. If you're not going to those, you're really doing yourself a disservice. If you're really wanting to start out, they're free, almost free. They're so cheap. Like a year membership's like $100 or $150 or something. And there's just tons of info, but more than anything, there's a huge network of people in your market there that you can meet and work with. I mean, isn't that where we met the first time? Was it one of those? A RIA meeting?
I think so. Yeah.
A RIA meeting or something, or luncheon. So anyway, as far as actionable steps, I take action, any action, just do something instead of just learning and never pulling the trigger, because you'll regret it.
For sure. Totally. Are there any books you've read throughout your career that you'd recommend to anyone?
Absolutely. I had flipped, 500 or 600 houses before I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I remember I was actually I was finishing the book, driving to see this $1 million house that I was going to buy. And this was back in like 2014 or something. So $1 million house back then is like a $3 million house now. And I remember just sitting there like, I've wasted my whole career. I could have been doing so much more. So, I mean, and these are all of my books are going to be kind of cliche ones. But yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad is gold.
Yep.
I mean, maybe everyone who's watched podcasts has listened to it, but it's good for a reread too sometimes because it reminds you of stuff. I swear by How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know I get a lot of people telling me that's super old info, but I get out of speeding tickets with that. I get dates with that. I deal with my kids. Like I really just like, it's great info. I used to read it once a year when I first was starting out, and I think it's fantastic. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, not real estate related, but we get caught up in making money and doing business and things, and some of that stuff just doesn't matter as much as we think it does. We think it matters when we're donating plasma for a living, because we gotta get that car or whatever it is we're chasing, but there's more to life than that. And sometimes we need to like wake up and be told or realize it because we get so caught up or fixed on the not important things.
Yep.
Couldn't agree more.
Great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like a lot of people with specifically, I mean, I don't know why, but within real estate, they do get very caught up in making more money, doing bigger things, this, that, and the other. And then their family or their friendships or, the things that are really important to them get kind of put to the wayside. So I think that's awesome. It's always good to stop, reflect, take a deep breath, and keep going.
Yeah, I feel in the real estate community, and I tease them sometimes, even though I am one of them and I love them all, but just take ourselves a little too seriously. Try not to take yourself so seriously. Life's fun. And if you have fun while you're doing real estate, you're going to do better every time.
Yeah, for sure. How can anyone who's listening to this get in touch with you, follow along on your journey? What would be a good place for them to reach out and connect?
Probably the best way to reach me is through Instagram, at @onthejohn. And
it's awesome.
Yeah. And
sometimes I forget that's what it is when I'm send you an email or something. I'm just like, oh yeah, nice. Yeah. What's his email? Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go. So that's probably the easiest way to get through to me because of the treasure hunt and some of the other stuff. I'm checking those messages quite a bit. I mean, you can text me, email me. I'm pretty easy to find. I've been a realtor for 20 years, so it's out there. But Instagram is probably the easiest way to reach out to me.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you coming on here. This has been great.
No, thanks, guys. It was really fun.
Yeah,
thanks, John.
It's been a long time in the making. So feel free to like, subscribe, and follow along for this upcoming potential. We'll call it a series, and some other things that are coming out here soon. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.